Hi, it's Gene, retired in Mexico, and I'm here with Professor Gumbo. Welcome to the channel, Wallbanger Reactions. I do want to remind you to hit that like or subscribe button. It really helps. Most of you don't do it, and it kills us, just so you know. So do that right now. It's right down below. And today we're going to go over David Bowie 44 albums. So we're going to rank them from worst to best. And my friend Professor Gumbo here, I'm going to move this screen just a little bit because my head is so much lower than my friends here. And I had this nice Bowie poster in the background, but we'll just do that. Okay, I think that looks a little bit better. And yeah, so let me explain the format. So, what did we include? There's so much posthumous material that what we decided to do was include anything that was released during David Bowie's lifetime. According to Wikipedia, I think there are 13, I think it said 13 posthumous live albums. So that would have kept us here all day. Now, when we say released during David Bowie's lifetime, we mean any uh, what we mean here is any thing that was released on any format. So if it was released on VHS or DVD, or maybe really heavily bootlegged, like the Toy album, we're going to include that. Soundtracks are included. And a couple anthologies because they cover the early material. We are excluding EPs and, like I say, any posthumous material. So, um, before I continue with the introduction, how you doing, Jim?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Gene. Appreciate that. Appreciate you making this available for me to do. I'm really enjoying this.
You're more than welcome. We're going to do albums countdown. We're going to do a top 30 songs countdown. And then Jim and I were just talking. We're probably going to do our favorite and least favorite videos that Bowie has recorded over the years. So, um, yeah, I'm looking forward to this. What was the other thing I was going to say? Yeah, as an icebreaker, I wanted to talk about the times that we've seen Bowie because the two of us have seen at least six shows that I can think of. One together and the rest of them separately. And Professor here, Jim, I'm going to call you Jim. I think the rest of the video, but Jim saw Bowie before I did and after I did, if you will. So I think I'm going to talk about these shows briefly in the order that we saw them. And if my memory serves me right here, I went ahead and made a little some notes here. The very first time either of us saw Bowie was you, Jim, and it was mid-September 1974.
That's correct. Yeah.
And that was
74.
the Diamond Dogs tour. You want to? I show that. Well, I'll go through the personnel list after you let me know what your reaction to that show was.
Okay. Well, in 1974, Cindy and I had just really gotten into David Bowie about a year before then. It was like during our sophomore year, and no, it was during our junior year, and this was the fall of our junior year. Is that right? Or no, it's fall of our senior year. Um, and and I had begun with my first David Bowie album was Diamond Dogs. But knowing that we were going to see him, I went and bought nearly all of the regular albums up until then that I didn't already have. I mean, I had Ziggy Stardust and a couple others, but I bought Space Oddity, Man Who Sold the World, I already had Hunky Dory, and what was the other one? Aladdin Sane, of course. Yeah, and I think I waited on pinups a little bit, but
Okay.
I listened to them voraciously because I really wanted to be familiar with his music. I had no idea what songs he was going to do. And we saw him at Veterans Memorial Coliseum And it was sort of a surprise because, I had seen on TV the spiky red-haired Ziggy Stardust Bowie, and out comes this guy in a, sleek sort of white zoot suit. And I was like, wait, this is Bowie? But it was really a great show. And I remember like one of the very first songs he did was Moon Age Daydream. I think that was the second track. The first track was something from Diamond Dogs, and so it was a real great experience. And of course, a live album was made from it, and so it confirmed, I won't say made me into a Bowie fan because we already were Bowie fans, but it confirmed how much we liked Bowie and was determined to continue seeing him as often as possible.
So what I've got here is what's so interesting about that tour is there were two live documents from that tour, and they're very different. They have a different personnel. So the first live document was David live, but then he went to Philadelphia and started recording some of the initial tracks or stems or whatever for Young Americans, and he came back with a revamped band, which is captured on the album Cracked Actor 74. And you saw the second leg of this tour. Um, so besides Bowie, I show that you saw Earl Slick was on guitar.
Mhm.
Carlos Alomar had been brought in from Philadelphia and wasn't on the first leg. Carlos Alomar is not on David Live. Mike Garson, you saw, David Sanborn, Richard Grando also on woodwinds. But then the rhythm section was changed out. It was swapped out. Initially, it was Herbie Flowers and Andy Newmark, and you saw Doug Roche and Greg Errico. And then there was a percussion player, lots of backing vocalists, including Robin Clark, who was Carlos Alomar's wife or partner, and Luther Vandross had joined the tour. So Cracked Actor was recorded 2 weeks, I think, after you saw him, or within 2 weeks. So that's a really good live document of the show that you saw. But you managed to get more of that morphing that people talk about, where he was starting to drift into his Plastic Soul period. Correct?
Yes, and yeah, and I've listened thoroughly many times to both albums, and maybe it's because it came out shortly after we saw him, but David Live is still has a spot in my heart, and it reminds me a lot. The Cracked Actor is also excellent, but I just if I have to give the nod to one, I would give it to David Live. I But the show itself, I forgot to mention the show. He had his Ruined City, show, and with a catwalk and a couple dancers, and it was great. And then we got a early taste of Young Americans. At one of the encores was Somebody Up There Likes Me, with some
Great.
really nice saxophone by David Sanborn.
And that was the show famously with the skull and the
Yeah.
Hamlet cape during Cracked Actor, right? So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I'm jealous as hell. So the second time either of us saw Bowie would be me, and you were away you were out of state at college at that time. You were a freshman at the university, but Bowie came to again Veterans Memorial Coliseum for the Station to Station tour, which was February 15th, 1976. I still have my ticket stub, $6.50. That's what
Wow.
I paid. Yeah. It was general admission and there were no chairs down there. We had to stand, but yeah, it was $6.50. And wow, one of the first shows I saw with my own money. And this one, I'll give you the lineup on this. The best document from that period was live at the Nassau Coliseum 76. Um, But I saw one of the first shows on the tour. He opened the tour in Vancouver in January, and I saw like maybe the third at most fourth show on that tour. So the band was really stripped down compared to the band you saw. You saw about 12, 13 people on stage. This one was Carlos Alomar on rhythm guitar, George Murray on bass, Dennis Davis on drums, and then you had Stacy Hedden on guitar, who replaced Earl Slick, who had been on the recording, and then Tony Kaye was on keyboards. Tony Kaye was a member of Yes early on before Rick Wakeman joined. I believe so. Does that sound right, Jim?
Yes, yes. And then he had his own prog band, Badger. But then
That's right.
with the 90125 album many years later, he rejoined Yes for a number of years.
So that was an excellent tour. He was dressed in black and white, but his hair was red, brown, and blonde. And they had all these black and white lights, really bright white lights. And so it was this very sort of German looking set. And the only splash of color was his hair. And so it just brought your eyes to him and his face and his profile. And the band was hot. Man, the band was hot. Okay, the second time that Jem and I saw Bowie was together. And this was March 30th, 1978, the Heroes tour. This we had like row two or something, didn't we,
Yeah,
Jim?
right up at the front.
Yeah, row one or two. I think it was row two. We were about as close as you could get. You had the same rhythm section of George Murray, Dennis Davis, and Carlos Alomar, but the rest of the band was this time on guitar was Adrian Belew, which I don't think either of us was very familiar with. He had kind of
No,
come
no,
over
that's
from
that started his relationship with Blue.
yeah, but Belew had played for Zappa, but I didn't really know anything about Belew. Did you?
No, I didn't. I just heard the name, and I knew that he did a good job filling in for Robert Fripp on the Fripp stuff.
Right. We kind of learned about Belew on the spot. The keyboard players were Sean Mays, who I don't know a lot about, but Roger Powell, who came over from Utopia, Todd Rundgren's Utopia. Ironically, even though I had not been to many shows, I had seen Roger Powell because I saw Todd Rundgren prior to seeing David Bowie. I saw Utopia the year before, so this is actually the second time I'd seen Roger Powell, second time I'd seen David Bowie, and then on violin was Simon House, who just passed away about a month ago, and so yeah, and that was a great show, wasn't it, Jim?
It absolutely was. Yeah. Um, I mentioned that Adrian Belew filled in for Robert Fripp, but the that incredible fluid line in the song Heroes was played by Simon House on violin, and it was great. Wasn't Simon House in Hawkwind?
That was it. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember which band he was in. You're absolutely right. Um, that I remember the opening so well because he opened with a movie, and it was the Bunel Dolly movie, Les Chien. Do you know how to say that?
Uh, Les Chiens Andalous.
Les Chien Andalou. He opened with this movie, which had the famous eye slitting scene. So we were already kind of grossed out. And then with all the house lights up, I don't know if you remember this, Jim, but with all the house lights up, Bowie simply strolls onto stage like he was one of the musicians in the band. And he walked up to the Chamberlain and began playing Warzawa. And it took the audience about a half a minute to realize that Bowie was on stage.
And Bowie was grinning, knowing that a lot of people didn't know that he was there yet. It kind of worked back from where we were, because back then it was very rare to have large screens. So, people didn't know yet what to expect. And we saw it's Bowie, he's playing. And, and then the rest of
Yeah, it
the
was
band
a
came out.
yeah, it was a great show, and the lighting, the lighting set, the stage set was really phenomenal too. And on the album stage, you can see those bright white lights that kind of, I don't know if you know, anyone who's seen the album cover to stage. I'll put a picture up of it up here to give you some idea for the viewers. The next time was, and I'll try to get going through this so we don't take any more of the viewers' time, but I just wanted to establish how big of a fan we were. So the next times that I saw Bowie was twice in 1 year. I saw him in May and August of '83. This was the Sirius Moonlight Tour. It had debuted in Europe, and I saw the first show of the US leg because it debuted at the US Festival in Devore, California, Memorial Day weekend, 1983. And then the show came to Phoenix in August, and I went to see it again. Um, this was Frank Sims and George Sims on background vocals, Stan Harrison and Lenny Pickett and Steve Elson on horns. You had Tony Thompson on drums, Carlos Alomar on guitar, David LeBolt on keyboards, Earl Slick on guitar. And then this list is not complete. I took this from Discogs, but Carmine Rojas was on bass. They don't have this listed here, but it was a really crackerjack band, and that was made into a movie when they did the Montreal concert. So saw Bowie twice in 1 year, and that was the last time that I saw Bowie. I saw him 4 times, 76, 78, twice in '83, never saw him again. However, about 21 years later, you saw him in
I did.
2004.
And I with my wife and daughter, and by that time, our daughter Kaylee had become a fan of David Bowie. And so, and it, what can I say about this show? I personally think that the show was the best David Bowie show I've seen. Better even than the Diamond Dogs show. Bowie was in rare form, and we were really incredibly impressed at how athletic he was, moving around on the stage, getting up on the catwalk and all. The band, talk about a crack band. You can say who the band was. I'll just point out Mike Garson and Earl Slick both really shone on it, and Gail Dorsey. Um, but if that was also made into a video, not the show that we saw, but that tour, and
Right.
um, and it was made into a CD as well, and that is called Reality Tour, and it's my favorite Bowie live album.
Yeah, and I have a copy of that because you gave it to me. It's fantastic. So also on that tour was Jerry Leonard on guitar and backing vocals, Sterling Campbell on drums, and then Catherine Russell, who is really interesting because she's a keyboardist, a percussionist, a guitarist, and a backing vocalist, and she sort of is the kind of rover, like the rover in baseball. She really is great on that. Sometimes in the background, but really integral to that band. And then the last thing I wanted to say is a show I don't think you know that I saw. So those are the 7 times we saw Bowie. But I saw in 2019, 3 years after Bowie died, I went to see, I had never seen Mike Garson because the 4 shows I saw did not feature Garson. You had seen him twice. I went to see a Bowie celebration in Mesa, Arizona in February of 2019, and it was put together by Mike Garson. And it had a number of guests. It had Bernard Fowler, who is famous for singing with the Rolling Stones, and just a bunch of guest artists. that were on there, and they were just playing Bowie songs, and it was great. So I got to see Mike Garson do the piano from Aladdin Sane. That was really cool.
That crazy
So
piano. Yeah.
yeah.
It's what
Okay.
I call Bowie jazz.
Now there was
Um,
a couple. Oh yeah, go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt you.
no, but he said that in an interview he said that he was fairly new. He had just joined the Spiders, and he was recording this, and Bowie said, "Make it more jazz." So he jazzed it up a little bit, and Bowie said, "More jazz." It was like more cowbell. And he said, "I'll tell you when to stop." So it became very avant-garde jazz, and that sort of became a trademark of Mike Garson's playing.
Yeah.
And we saw that tour of the tribute to David Bowie, but we saw it down in Tucson. But I bought
Oh, you
Cindy
did.
Mike,
Okay.
yeah, and I bought Cindy a CD of Mike Garson doing instrumental versions of Bowie tracks, which is really cool.
Yeah, I remember that. I'd forgotten about it, but I now that you mention it. All right. Well, we probably ought to jump in, but there was a couple things. So let me explain the format, and then you can make those couple comments you asked to make. We're doing 44 albums, so we're going to start off with our bottom four since it's 44, and we'll take turns, and then we'll do five at a time until I guess till we get to the top five, and then we'll alternate and take turns. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay. And so which one of us should go first?
Would you, your choice. I just before I talk about mine, I want to talk about the uh, the the reasoning behind my choices.
Okay.
Would you like
So
me to do
we'll
that now?
why don't I start, and
Okay,
then that'll allow you to go last, and then when we do the songs, we'll flip it around.
sure.
But then when you get to your bottom four, you can explain it at that time. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay, so let me start with my bottom four. Um, and we're going to give star ratings with these. Okay, so one thing the main thing I'll say about this is first of all, when I did my spreadsheet, my average rating is 3.7. So that's pretty
Okay,
good.
it is.
Um,
Yeah.
that's a pretty damn good rating. And unlike the last two discographies we did on Van Morrison and Bob Dylan, where I started like around a half a star or 1 star, I'm not starting that low with Bowie. There is no Bowie album that I absolutely hate. But I do have four at the bottom here that I'm, lukewarm about. Uh, so anyway, it's going to be kind of a typical list. Oh, I also wanted to say that Jem in 2019 did a favorite songs playlist on Spotify, which I copied. So I will say that we were really surprised by each other's um, choices on the last two discographies that we did. But I do want to be transparent with the viewers that I have a much better idea about what's going to go down here on Jem's list than I did on the other two discographies because of that playlist. And I I do have an inkling of how this is going to go down, so I expect to be less surprised. But Jem might be surprised by mine. But I think it's going to be a little typical. Number 44 for me is the obvious choice for a lot of people. It's Never Let Me Down. Sorry, some good songs on here, but my criteria is usually songwriting or performance. But on the lower end of this, we do have some production issues. I'm not I'm not a audiophile, but there are times when the production really interferes. I had this at 1.5 stars because I had listened to the original production. But then yesterday I listened to the 2018 remaster, which softens some of those harsh drum tones on here. And I thought, yeah, that's a better recording. So yesterday I bumped this up to 2 stars. I like Time Will Crawl. I like Never Let Me Down. Those the title track. Those are my two favorite songs. Day in Day Out is decent. And then the rest of the songs are hit and miss. I'm not big on 87 and Cry or even the cover of Bang Bang, even though I love Iggy Pop. Um, I don't have to apologize for this choice because this is the only album that apparently Bowie really didn't like. And he wanted it re recorded. And sure enough, after he passed away, they took his vocal stems and did a whole new recording. It's Never Let Me Down 2018, 2019, something like that. All right. Number 43. This is an anthology that we included because it covers his early material. This is the Rhino compilation, early on 1964 to 1966. Okay, so why do I have this so low? Because I love 60s rock and roll and mod music and all that. I think it's because this album, I don't really get Bowie's persona till about the middle of the compilation. It covers several bands that he worked with, the King Bees, um, and the Manish Boys, I think. And it isn't really till you get to his recordings with the lower third that I think Bowie started to hit his stride and his personality came out. So those really early King Bees and Manish Boys blues-based songs, I like them, but they sound like they could have been recorded by anybody, really. I don't hear a strong, obviously, I recognize Bowie's voice, but I don't really get that personality. And here's the real issue I have with this song. About midway, or the album, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking correctly, but about halfway through early on comes this song called Can't Help Thinking About Me by Davy Jones in the lower third. And to my ears, that song just jumps out like, oh, okay, here we go now. Here we go. Can't Help Thinking About Me is a great song, even though he made fun of it on VH1 Storytellers. I love Can't Help Thinking About Me. I think it's a cut above the rest of the material. And then the rest of the album's pretty good, kind of hit and miss. So I'm at 2 stars with this. It's just not my go to Bowie. Number 42. This might upset some people, but let me explain. Let me explain. I have a defense for this. I have the debut, David Bowie from 1967. Uh, Charming but lightweight is my notes. But the real issue I have with this is that Darum did an anthology later, a 2 disc anthology, where they include my favorite songs. And that's what's wrong with David Bowie. The debut, there's 2 albums called David Bowie. This is the 67 one with him with the mod picture. It's just, it's just not my favorite songs. Now, it also doesn't have his worst song, I think. It doesn't have the Laughing Gnome on it, thank God. But it it doesn't have my favorite songs either. It doesn't have the London Boys, Let Me Sleep Beside You, or um oh, it does have When I Live My Dream. I wrote that it didn't have When I Live My Dream. But basically, there's about 3, 4 songs that I really like on here. It's that Anthony Newley, Tiny Tim kind of period. The reason I have it so low here at 2 stars is because Darum bested this album with an anthology that I'll talk about later on. Um, if this had been the only recording document, I might have had it a little bit higher. But I think the Darum anthology is a much better document here. All right, number 41, an album that Jim asked us to include. And I'm sorry, Jim, but I've got Labyrinth here at number 41. But I am up to 2.5 stars, and I think this works really well in context of the film. But listening to it separately, it's about half Trevor Jones instrumentals. I don't, this is the kind of synth programming that I don't like, that I've heard on Michael Bolton and Phil Collins and Bette Midler and Julio Iglesias and Willie Nelson. Listen to the song To All the Girls I've Loved Before. It's that chimey synth programming that I just don't like. But when I saw the film, all this music worked great. So I'm just going to rate it 2.5 stars out of context of the film. The one song that is my favorite on here is not one of the hits. It's As the World Falls Down. That's my favorite song on the album. All right. Any comments, Jim?
No, I think, you hit on several things I was going to say, both about David Bowie and about Labyrinth. My number 44 at the bottom. Oh, I want to say a couple things first. Those of you that have been following Gene's stuff know that we did a comprehensive ranking of Van Morrison and Bob Dylan. And Van Morrison is my absolute favorite artist. And so I was really surprised to see that I had more low rated Van Morrison albums than David Bowie ones. And I was trying to think about why that is, because my lowest rating on in this list is a 3 stars. And the reason I think for this is because with Van Morrison, I had certain expectations that often weren't fulfilled. But with Bowie, I always went into it expecting him to do something different, not having any expectations and just being open to what he was doing. And I think that really made a difference. Bowie, by the way, is my second favorite artist, falling right between Van Morrison and Bob Dylan. So, so having this, doing this star rating, you're going to say, "Oh, he's a huge Bowie fanboy." Yeah, I am. Cindy and I have been fans of Bowie since the early '70s, and one of the things that I've found is what I was, as you may know, I was a school teacher, and if I would be playing Bowie or talking about Bowie to some of my students, they go, "Oh, I like Bowie. I like," and you'll find out what that album is shortly. But a lot of people, even people our age, which is like really old people, the geriatric crowd, they have a favorite period of David Bowie. They have a favorite album of David Bowie. Oh, I wasn't into his '70s stuff, but I really liked Let's Dance. So, Cindy and I have stuck with him all the way through, um, from all the way from Ziggy Stardust. We did got to know the 2 albums before then, but Ziggy Stardust all the way through to Black Star. Okay. And so, never gave up on Bowie. So you're going to see that I gave a lot of high ratings there. Okay. All right. So the lowest one, not that it sucks. I don't think Bowie ever made an album that sucks. But for the very reason that Gene gave, and that is uh, uh, the Darum anthology. It's David Bowie. Okay, the 1967 David Bowie. Um, when Cindy and I were in high school, there was a double vinyl set called Images that came out, and it had this material on it plus some extras. And that's how I discovered it. And they had these cartoony, like comic strip, images along on the front. And I mentioned this before, but sometimes we are influenced by a cover. Okay. I mean, when I say a cover, I don't mean a recording of, I mean the artwork.
Uh,
And so because of that, I never took these songs seriously. However, ultimately, I agree with Gene. There are several that are on there. When I Live My Dream is a great one. The London Boys. It's the more dramatic ones, not the bouncy juvenilia, but these other songs. And do I? Yeah, I have right here. Let me double check. Okay, so When I Lived My Dream. And Silly Boy Blue. That's another one. Um, and so yeah, and there Love You Till Tuesday is one of the few bouncy ones that I like. So it's not that it's a bad album, it's just that it has been displaced by a better
Yeah.
collection. Okay. That's the real problem that I have with it. Uh, Now the next three numbers 43 through 41 happen to be a band that I don't know, maybe it was where I was at the time, but in the late 80s, early 90s, I had I just really wasn't listening to a lot of Bowie. And then he came out with the Tin Machine albums. And if I have any complaint about the Tin Machine albums, like first two studio albums, is that there's a kind of homogeneity to the stuff. It's like has big thumping metallic sound to it that just and a lack of the wonderful David Bowie harmonies or melodies. Okay, it doesn't really have his melodies, but I'll get to those two in a minute. I'm going to start with the least essential one, 1992's "Oy Vey Baby." It's a live album. It's not even an entire live set. It's a single disc, and if I recall correctly, it doesn't have anything new on it. It's just stuff from the first two albums. And I will say that I really like the live version of Roxy Music's "If There Is Something," but it's probably for me, along with David Bowie for the reasons I mentioned, the most disposable David Bowie album. As a matter of fact, I never got it on CD. It's the one album here that, I only got on cassette. And that's because
Hmm.
I was poor at the time. And so I was buying cassettes. Okay. Then next we have Tin Machine 2, which I think is a minor improvement over the first Tin Machine. And it probably has to do with the covers on there. Actually, there's just one cover, and that's Roxy Music's "If There Is Something," um, and that's not. Just double check. Uh, yeah, I just wanted to check to make sure here. Yeah, yeah. So it was a good album. It had some good stuff on it, and I like it, but uh, a disappointment, a relative disappointment for Bowie. And then there's the first Tin Machine album, which really surprised me with its sound. You had the abrasive, angular guitar sounds of Reeves Gabrels, and who later went on to do some stuff with Lou Reed. Um, and then you had the Sales Brothers, Soupy Sales Sons, who were both really into a lot of drugs at the time. But the on as the rhythm section. And the
Hmm.
first album does have a few really good things, including a dynamite cover of John Lennon's "Working Class Hero." And so, I would say that's one of the albums that really, I mean, that's one of the songs that really made a difference on it. And there's "I Can't Read" that has "I Can't Read Shit Anymore,"
Hmm.
and it's an angry album. Okay, that's the best way to put it. It's an angry album, and I don't like angry Bowie as much as I like conflicted Bowie. I won't say
Okay.
I like his happy stuff, but this is like almost unrelentingly angry. In 1984, O'Brien says to Winston, "Imagine a boot stomping on a human face for all eternity."
Mm.
And that's sort of what I get from Tin Machine. a boot stomping on a human face. Okay. So I got 41, 42, 43 are Tin Machine 2, and Oy Vey Baby. And then 44 at the bottom, David Bowie. It's 1967.
Okay. Well, I think I'm surprised. I think I thought you would have all of that a little bit higher. That's interesting. Um, okay, I'm going to go with my number 40. And this pains me a little bit because I liked this album a lot when it came out. I'm going to go with 1984's Tonight. Um, like these songs, like them a lot. I think the problem, this is one of those albums where the production gets in the way. So I'm pretty soon I'm going to not be talking about production negatively. I've got this at 2.5 stars. Um, so the title track is a really good example of what brings this album down. Tonight, love the song. It's from Lust for Life, Iggy Pop's Lust for Life. He does it as a sort of reggaeized duet with Tina Turner. Then he puts Tina Turner way down in the mix so you can barely hear her. He's twice as loud as she is. And it just isn't as good as the Iggy Pop version. Uh, Don't Look Down is good, but I like the Iggy Pop version better. But now, of course, the obvious exception on here is Loving the Alien, which is a fantastic song. But even that one has this kind of marimba thing on it. So I find that Bowie's vocals also are a little bit, sometimes okay, he can be over the top. That can be a good thing, a bad thing, a neutral thing. Uh, Bowie is dramatic, he's theatrical. On here, the over the top vocals often work against the material. It came after Let's Dance. It fails to be Let's Dance Part Two. Um, yeah, I'm not a fan of the backup vocals either. Uh, Derek Bramble produced it, but my understanding is Hugh Padgham or Padgham, whichever you want to say his name, had to come in and kind of rescue the album. Uh, yeah, I don't know. One thing I will say in the album's defense, so a lot of people hate his Beach Boys cover of God Only Knows. I don't mind that at all. I think that's probably one of my three favorite songs on the album. Yeah, I defend Bowie's version of God Only Knows. Number 39. We are now up to 3 stars. Another example of an album divorced from the video. This is Glass Spider. I have watched the Glass Spider video on YouTube, and I like it. I like it. I think I think Tony Basil does the choreography on there, and it's really really interesting. Of course, you got Peter Frampton coming down and singing "Sons of the Silent Age" and all these different things. It's really interesting. But this is ironically the tour that got Carlos Alomar canned. He was the musical director, and the Glass Spider tour was kind of a disaster. Um, it's a good album, 3 stars. I just think divorced from the visuals, it doesn't work quite as well as an audio document as a visual document. Number 38, still at 3 stars. I'm going with VH1 Storytellers. Here's what I'll say good about this. Bowie is engaging, his personality, and he's in very good voice. What's my issue with it? One thing is there's this one backup singer that's way too loud. The mix on this album is really weird, and she sings, and it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. Um, this was the singer that Reeves Gabrels had picked when apparently Bowie wanted to work with TLC, and Reeves Gabrels nixed it, vetoed it, and he got this. I forget her name, but she's on there, and I don't know that she's a bad singer, but it's just that man, they got her cranked up in the mix, and then the stories he tells. they're not as revealing as I would like to be. And I think my other complaint, and again, I like the album. I'm just explaining why I have it ranked at 39 or 38 rather. It feels more like a promotion for Hours. So Hours is an album I'm going to be talking about later, an album that I like more than most people do. But I will say he was doing a lot of promotion in 1999, and I've watched a lot of those clips, everything from the BBC to the Manhattan Center to Kit Kat Club. There's all these recordings from 99, and they all feel a little bit safe. So that adult contemporary label that Hours picks up, which I don't mean to jump ahead to talk about that album, but it's just that adult contemporariness I hear on here more than I do Hours. He's doing a lot of songs from that album, and it could have been better. He could have gone into his back catalog and really told us some juicy stories and hit some of the more interesting songs. He could have talked about his brother, his half brother, Terry Burns. There are a lot of spoiled opportunities on here. It just feels like a promotional concert. So I like it. 3 stars, VH1 Storytellers. Number 37. All right. This might upset some people, but this is where I have Toy. Now, it sounds great. It's absolutely really well recorded with a crackerjack band. A lot to like about this album. I've got this confliction. I just got around to kind of knocking, the early on compilation, 64 to 66, and the 67 David Bowie debut album. I've got those down at 2 stars. And yet, when I listen to Toy, I have a bit of a hankering for the older versions of the material. This is illogical. I cannot defend it. But there's some good stuff on here, and certainly things like Shadow Man. That's a really good song. I didn't write down my favorite songs on here, but I picked this up digitally when it was a bootleg, and that bootleg had Uncle Floyd on it, which I love. I think I like that even more than the later Slipaway version on Heathen. I like all that footage from the Uncle Floyd show. It's really touching. Afraid was on there, and of course, then he saved those songs for Heathen and ended up doing just the older material, which was the correct thing to do. I like this album, but you were talking about disposable. This is not a disposable album, but I do think it's inconsequential, if I can use a different word. Anyway, 3 stars for Toy. 36, another one that may upset some people, but I have Earthling here. So this is a brain thing. Okay, these are good songs. When I listen to live material from this tour, the songs are really good. Um, it's such a frenetic album that it fatigues my brain to listen to it all the way through from start to finish. I love industrial music. I love Einstürzende Neubauten. I love Nine Inch Nails. I love all this Prodigy techno. I have several techno compilations. So if I love techno and I love all this beat music, why is it that this album fatigues me? Um, Now it does pick up. I'm a little bit odd on this one. I kind of like the last 3 tracks. I like The Last Thing You Should Do, I'm Afraid of Americans, and yeah, I actually like Law, Earthlings on Fire. I think the album closes really strongly, but my hot take on this album would be this. This is Reeves Gabrel's favorite album that he ever recorded with Bowie. If it's Reeve Gabrel's favorite album, it's probably my least favorite. What does that mean? Does that mean I don't like Gabrel's? No, quite the opposite. I'm going to talk about him later and when I really do like Gabrels. It's just that if it's his favorite, probably my least favorite. I like Reeves Gabrels, but he and I don't see eye to eye on our favorite Bowie albums. Um, it kind of pains me to put Earthling at 36, but that's where it's at. Your turn, Jim.
Okay. Um, the next 10 that I'm going to talk about, five and then five, are all 3.5. I've bumped them up from a 3 to a 3.5. And I mentioned earlier that, I taught high school, and a number of my former students, what they knew David Bowie from was Labyrinth.
Uh-huh.
And they loved the Labyrinth album. Many of them had the songs memorized from Labyrinth. And it said, "Oh, David Bowie, yeah, he made that great album, Labyrinth." I said, "Well, okay, all right." But it does have some great songs. You're right. The Trevor Jones stuff isn't that, spectacular, but the As the World Falls Down is that that's and the and Magic Dance and Underground. And those are songs that I would put on any large, lengthy David Bowie anthology. They're really worth it for that. So, and there's a couple others. So if you think of Labyrinth as a Bowie EP, or maybe the Bowie equivalent of Magical Mystery Tour, with a lot, because on Magical Mystery Tour, you had, or the later release of Yellow Submarine by the Beatles, you had the Beatles songs on one side, and then you had the songs by George Martin on the other side. This is kind of what it's like. It's why it's not any higher
Hmm.
than a 3.5. But from this point on, just everybody take it as a given. These are albums that I would not want to be without. Okay. I would not, with one exception. Okay. Next, Gene, Tonight. That's my I agree with you. I've There's a lot I like about Tonight. Um Bowie himself has talked poorly about it, and he said that he kind of lost his way in the 1980s, that he had a huge success with Let's Dance, and no complaints there because Bowie always would do different types of things. But from after Let's Dance, he spent the 80s trying to be who other people wanted him to be, okay, rather than following his own muse. And Bowie has to follow his own muse. So Tonight is an interesting hodgepodge of things. I love the song Loving the Alien. It's really, it's one of my favorite Bowie songs.
Hmm.
But other things on there, well, there was a joke made, and I don't know if it was Iggy who made this joke or not, but there was a joke made that whenever Iggy needed money, Bowie would record some of his songs. And there are four co-written Iggy songs on here. So he must have made Iggy a rich man with this album. And those are let's see, you got Don't Look Down, Tonight, Neighborhood Threat,
Neighborhood threat.
Tumble and Twirl. No, there's five. Uh, Neighborhood Threat, Tumble and Twirl, and Dancing with the Big Boys. Okay, although that wasn't a an Iggy Pop until, I mean, he collaborated with Bowie on that one, but still, five out of nine songs either written by or co-written by Iggy Pop. That's got to have some significance. Okay, so
Yeah.
Tonight is Bowie's Iggy Pop album. Um, and then he was going to continue to do that later, as we will see. Um, so I mean, but he kind of had a. It looks like he almost had a paternal feeling towards Iggy, even though Iggy was an early influence on Bowie. Bowie kind of felt responsible for him and wanted to take care of him, which is why when Iggy was in rehab several times, Bowie would smuggle drugs to him because he was his friend. Let that sink in. Okay. Um,
I get it.
uh, then we have Never Let Me Down. Gene, you mentioned the production, and the later production is better. Okay, it's better, and but I liked this album when it came out. Um, it had songs on it that I didn't care about.
Hmm.
Like what's the one that had uh, Mickey Rourke rapping on it? I know that they took that off completely.
Oh,
Um,
the song Dizzy something? You
yeah, yeah.
dizzy?
I mean, but they took off the rap, which
Okay.
it wasn't a mistake. Um, but this is an album that Time Will Crawl is just absolute dynamite song in either version of it. And 87 and Cry is, an interesting song. And then we have, what's the first song on the album? I'm having a mental block
Day in,
here.
day out.
Oh, yeah,
Day in, day
Day In,
out.
Day Out. Yes, Day In, Day Out. Absolutely. That was, I really liked that one. So is it a flawed album? Yeah, it is for Bowie, but is it an essential album? Yes, it's that too. Um, and so, all right. So, I'm sorry, I lost my place here. Okay. So that was Never Let Me Down, which did kind of let me down. However, I have to say one of the things that kept it from being lower in that bottom four was Cindy always said that she liked, and I agree with her, that she liked Bowie's interesting science fiction type lyrics. Okay. And he hadn't done those for a while. Um, when Low came out, we both were kind of, okay, don't look on the carpet. I drew something awful on it. Okay, all right. His lyrics were not, I mean, he was trying to do lyrics like David Bowie did lyrics, and that didn't necessarily work. Um, so anyway, um, but with Time Will Crawl is great. And the pills that I took made my fingers disappear. Really great. Now, next, I put this album because I've listened to it and it deserves to be on here, but it's the only Bowie album that I do not have here. And
Mm.
that is an album that was never released under normal circumstances, and that's liveandwell.com. Okay, which is essentially, I believe, it's mostly songs from Outside and what's the other one? No, no, not Outside. Yeah, Outside and uh, I don't know. I can't remember now. I just know that the songs themselves. Um, I, I wa- I wasn't really impressed with the set list, but the main problem is I don't have the album. It's, you can listen to it on Spotify.
Hmm.
But I never got this one. Okay, so that's liveandwell.com. It's like it's like a Bowie extra, a Bowie promotional, which he did lots of.
Hmm.
After Live and Well is the Durham anthology. Okay,
Okay.
for the very reasons that Gene said, and that is that it has the stuff from David Bowie, but better. Okay, I mean because all the songs are there, including an early run through of Space Oddity. Okay, so Labyrinth, Tonight, Never Let Me Down, Live and Well, and Darum Anthology. Those are the next five for me.
Okay. I have no comments on that. Uh, so I'm at number 35. Number 35 for me is Ziggy Stardust and this. No, I'm just kidding.
Huh.
I just wanted to throw you there for a second. Um, did it work?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
I nearly
Number
choked.
30. What's that?
I nearly choked.
Yeah, no, we'll be talking about that later. 35 for me is Tin Machine Live Oy Vey Baby. Um, 3 stars. And the song that people hate from this album is Stateside. And I don't mind it. That's that 8 minute song that Hunt Sales sings. But yeah, the interesting thing is you were saying that it doesn't have any new material, and that's true. But since it borrows from both of the Tin Machine albums, it acts a little bit like the best of both worlds. So that's one nice thing about live albums is sometimes you have songs that are cold, Culled. I guess that's the right word.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, 3 stars. I like this album. And I haven't talked about the other Tin Machines yet. Number 34. Okay, I'm going to have to defend this one because this is a favorite. This is a top 10 album for a lot of people. And this is Outside. I get this album. So what's my issue with it? I got it at 3 stars. A lot of good songs. My favorites, probably Hello Space Boy and I have been to Oxford, or I have not been to Oxford Town. Is it I've not been to Oxford Town? Yeah. Or I've been to Oxford Town anyway. Do you remember Pete Townsend had this album called Psycho Derelict?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought about that album because that was another album that confused some listeners. So he responded by putting out an album called Psycho Derelict, the music, where he cut all the narration and the storyline and the segues and just put the songs. And I own Psycho Derelict, the music. I do not own Psycho Derelict. I used to, I got rid of it. That's what I would like with this double album. I would like outside the music only. I love many of these songs. I do not like these interludes. I'm just going to be honest. I played it again yesterday. To listen to this album from start to finish with no interruption, just listen to it all the way through, really difficult for me. And I don't care for Bowie's kind of acting on here, the kind of chipmunk vocals or the exaggerated Cockney accent. It's all a distraction for me. But there are these songs like other songs like No Control and the title track Outside. A lot of these songs are done very well live. So I don't have an issue with the music on here. Interestingly enough, David Richards co-produced this with Brian Eno, and David Richards did Never Let Me Down. But it's a really good sounding album. I don't know. It's too long. I and I also I've tried, I get it, art crimes, okay. I get the basic concept of the album. But to try to follow the storyline, I don't even bother. It's best just to listen to the album and know what it's about. But these different characters that come in, the girl, the murdered girl, and all these different things. I don't know. Bowie plays all of these characters, and it's distracting to me. So, but 3 stars. I like the music. Number 33. This is where I have liveandwell.com. I like the set list on here, though you are exactly right. It is promotional because he doesn't have any oldies on here. Hardly. He's got V2 Schneider and one other older song, and even those aren't, glam rock era. I don't know. I like this album, and this is where I like Reeves Gabrels. He's ripping it up on this album. Uh, I think it was a fan club release. I
Hmm.
think. Um, and then it was later released digitally, and so now we all get to listen to it. Yeah, it sounds good. 7 Years in Tibet, one of my favorite performances on here. And from outside, there's a song called The Voyeur of Utter Destruction. I think that's really nice. Gabrels is great on that. 3 stars. Yeah, good album. A little busy, but this is the Gabrels that I like. Number 32, here's where I have the Darren Anthology, 66 to 68. Man, there's all this material on here that's not on the debut album, London Boys. I wrote When I Live My Dream, but that's a mistake. We got Love You Till Tuesday. Okay, well, that's on the debut too. So I'll just tell you these are the songs that I like. London Boys, When I Live My Dream, Love You Till Tuesday, the early version of Space Oddity, Let Me Sleep Beside You, and a real sleeper, In the Heat of the Morning. Really like that song. So yeah, exactly what you said. This is the 66, 67 Bowie period that I like. Um, by the way, that David Bowie debut album was released on the same day as Sergeant Pepper. I think it got
Yes.
buried a little bit because of that. June 1st, 1967. So this later Darren anthology from 1997, really nicely put together, nicely mastered. Yeah, it sounds really good. And then at number 31, I have another album that separated from the visuals. Though in this case, there were some problems with this. This is Ziggy Stardust, the motion picture. Okay, don't panic. Not this Ziggy Stardust, but Ziggy Stardust, the motion picture, filmed by D.A. Pennebaker. And they had all sorts of problems with both the recording and the video recording and the audio recording of this extremely important historical document. I think watching the movie one time is essential for any Bowie fan. I like Moon Age Daydream. I like My Death, which I think is Jacques Brel, right? Is
Yes.
that Jacques Brel? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And Rock and Roll Suicide is really obviously well done with the retirement announcement. But yeah, the mix is pretty muddy on here, pretty sloppy. So for fans only, as a Bowie fan, I find Ziggy Stardust, the motion picture, to be indispensable, but not a entry point. That's for sure. I have it at 3 stars. So Tin Machine, Live, Oy Vey Baby, Outside, liveandwell.com, Darren Anthology, and Ziggy Stardust, the motion picture.
Okay, good, good. Most of what you're saying so far, I agree with you. Um, and I think in this case, Gene, I think when we start getting down to our favorite albums, we're going to be mostly dealing with a certain period of time.
Yeah.
Not that Bowie was bad, but he has a golden age. Um, so golden years. All right. So now the other 19, no, sorry, 19, the other 3.5 star albums, five of them. I ended with Darum Anthology. Just underneath that is early on, 1964 to 1966. I put these together because the fact is you should listen to one and then the other. And you would be forgiven to simply believe that Bowie began in 1969 with the album that was later renamed Space Oddity, because Bowie was looking for who he was at this time. And nowhere is this more clear than with Early On, with like it's a collection of singles. And it begins with Liza Jane, and the David Bowie and or David Jones and the King Bees, and it's an album if you really love Bowie, but it's not an essential one, although there are some really cool songs on there. But what I like about it is that as you listen to Early On, you begin to hear all of these various uh, changes that he's making, and it's like he's dipping his toe in the water one at a time. Okay, I mean, and then
Hmm.
he gets it's like, okay, all right, this sort of works and this doesn't. And so there is that. Let me just check something here. Okay. Um, so beginning with Liza Jane and then ending with I'm Not Losing Sleep and I Dig Everything. You're getting near the end. You're getting to the songs that Bowie decided to redo later for Boy, and I
Hmm.
think that that's kind of interesting because a lot of these were redone when Bowie said, "Okay, I'm mature now. I've done these songs, and now I want to do them differently." And so, do you want to listen to the other ones? Well, I don't know. Um, I kind of like these, but I like the toy versions better. Okay, and then next we have Serious Moonlight. Now, this is not because I don't like the album. It's just as David Bowie live albums are concerned, I'm not as impressed with it, but it probably will mean more to you, Gene, because you saw him on the Serious Moonlight tour. And to me, this was when Bowie was at his most commercial, although that was probably a mask, just like everything else was. So like this is the pop David Bowie, but he does some great covers on Serious Moonlight, and which is why I give it a 3.5, which is above the midpoint. And then we talked about this before, Cracked Actor live in Los Angeles, an earlier version of the Diamond Dogs tour. And it's interesting because we talked about the show that I saw, and it was right on the cusp when Bowie was changing his sound from Cracked Actor to David Live. So, you know, I like both of them. At first, when Cracked Actor came out, I said, "Oh wow, this was just before the show that I saw." And maybe my memory is screwed up. Maybe it is more like it, but uh, my memory is more like David Live. Maybe because that was reinforced.
Hmm.
But it's a great album, and if anyone likes David Bowie live, it's worth hearing. And he's a great live artist because with whatever face he is was wearing at the time, that face will become the face that he sings through for the show. And then we have another live one, and I'm going to go through these two quickly because I already mentioned them. Glass Spider. Okay. Um, Glass Spider, better seen than heard, but there's some good songs on there. You got Peter Frampton doing some nice guitar work, and it's just it's a little bit overwrought, maybe a little bit over the top, but it's certainly better than Never Let Me Down.
Hmm.
And then the final one, The Buddha of Suburbia, another 3.5, is which it was a soundtrack, but Bowie does all the music for it, and much of it is sung. And it ends with one of my favorite Bowie songs, though not the version of it, but Strangers When We Meet. And that if nothing else, that ties a nice bow on the album and makes it excellent. So early on, Serious Moonlight, Cracked Actor, Glass Spider. and the Buddha of Suburbia. And those are my 3.5
Okay.
Bowie albums.
Oh, that sounds great.